The Supreme Court has essentially reshaped American life.
It's going to be legal chaos.
Where abortion is legal in about half the states, illegal in half the states.
Roe versus Wade has officially been overturned. That means abortion is no longer a constitutional law. It's no longer a human right. That means that abortion is now going to go to the states, and the states are going to get to decide whether they want abortion to be legal or illegal within that state. This obviously has shaken up the country. It has pro-choicers livid. We're seeing riots. We're seeing people in shambles. We're seeing people going crazy over this. And honestly, I'm not surprised. Today's conversation is all about that. We talk about abortion laws. We talk about Roe versus Wade being overturned. We talk about the reaction, and we talk about our opinions in this conversation. I invited a good friend. I think that y'all are going to enjoy it. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. For the new listeners, the podcast, you can find it being The Common Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere that you find your podcast. That's where you can find the podcast. If you want to get in contact, maybe pitch an idea, the best way to get in contact with us is through Instagram, being The Real Common Podcast. That is the best way you can get in contact with us here on The Common Podcast. And I think that's going to be it. I hope that y'all enjoyed today's conversation. I really liked it, and I think that y'all's feedback on this is going to be very appreciated. So without further ado, I hope y'all enjoy, and until next time, we'll see y'all later. Thank you. Back to another episode of The Common Podcast, where we speak upon common sense and realize it really isn't that common. Guys, welcome back. This episode is exciting. We kind of touched on this maybe 2 to 3 weeks. It is now. We were kind of talking about the prediction of what might happen, which has got a lot of people, certain demographic, and we'll get to that further in the conversation, in shambles right now. People are pissed off. And we're talking about the whole Roe v. Wade being overturned. So for those of you that do not know and aren't aware, you should inform yourself. Roe v. Wade was basically abortion. And it's so in the last 50 years, abortion has been a constitutional right, which means it is a human right and it is a protected right. With Roe v. Wade being overturned on June 24th, 2022, it is now stating that abortion is no longer a constitutional right and is going to be handled by the states. So abortion is still going to be around. It's just not going to be legal in certain states. So I think that needs to be clarified. I think a lot of people think that abortion is just banned and it's just illegal everywhere. That's not the case. So it's only in certain states, and we'll kind of jump into the logistics. There's a lot to talk about. There's talking about, well, you can just travel to another state if you want to get an abortion. And then there's obviously what the liberals are arguing is like, well, I don't think the government should have rights over what I say over my body. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of people are pissed off, and I have some things to say about it. But before we get into that, for the new listeners that are listening right now, you can find the podcast with The Common Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find podcast. And if you want to get in contact, pitch a topic possibly, or just engage with us, the best way to do that is through Instagram, being The Real Common Podcast. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, who is muted right now, Mr. Saw Guido.
Hello, guys.
My good friend. This is probably your, third time on the show?
At least, yeah.
At least. So, Roe v. Wade, we'll talk a little bit about what is going on. What do you know, and how do you feel about the whole situation?
So far, all I've heard of is that basically it's just this federal thing that went through where you can't get abortion in certain states. I'm not really too knowledgeable on that, but I that's what I've heard, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what states it applies to, but I hope it's not mine.
It's not. So it's I guess from your perspective, not much is changing because for those of you that don't know, Saul is from California, which is a liberal state, and they've already opted out, making it illegal. So California will be abortion. I don't even know how to say it. Abortion pro,
Friendly.
abortion pro, and pro-abortion. And so you'll still be able to get that over there. But do you think this is a big deal? Do you think that it's a violation of human rights? I had a pastor on my podcast talking about, he was obviously on the more conservative side, and he was trying to make a point, an arguing point on why the government should ban abortion. And I guess what I tried to translate to him, I think the biggest thing that he had to contend with is why should his beliefs have overruling over somebody else's body, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So why should, because I don't think abortion is something that I should do, why does that mean other people shouldn't be able to do it? I guess is what I told him is what the biggest thing he has to contend with. And for those of you that didn't hear that podcast, he makes a very compelling argument. You should go check it out. But how do you feel? Do you think this is a violation of our human rights? Do you think the government should be having a say in what we do with our body?
Fuck, man. I hate talking about this because it's a very touchy subject, right? Like, people will get mad at you for this if you pick one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say what I think. I kind of see both sides, right? But for me, I personally don't think you should be told what to do with your body. That's just me, right? Like, if I was a chick and the government was like, nah, you have to have babies if you get pregnant, I'd be like, fuck. Just the fact that you tell me I have to, no, I kind of don't want to. That's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think the government should have a say in that. Although I do think there should be these strict regulations and rules to abortions, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think if you I know it sounds kind of dumb, right? But there should be a limit to how many you can get. I don't think you should be able to get as many as you want. I think that's just like, at some point you have to be like, nah, bro, that's too many. If you're over here, like, if you have 3 in 1 year, like, what the fuck is wrong with you, right? Like,
so what? Like, we hand people out like punch cards, and it's like, yep, you punched them all out for this decade.
Bro, I think there has to be, like, obviously it goes in your medical record, right? That's just something that there's no way, right? Like, I think it should be used for example, for people, for rape victims, right? You hear that one a lot, right? People that get raped and get pregnant.
That's a very small minority, but I mean, it does happen.
Yeah, it does happen. It's like the point, right?
3% of abortions is that.
Yeah, but and I don't see why that should be taken away from a victim, right? If you got raped and now you're forced to have the guy's baby, I don't think that should be a thing.
The argument that the pastor had about that, because I had asked him, I was like, so what do you say about those victims, right? And he was saying, he's like, think about it like this. A guy has done a heinous crime, which is the rape, so badly that even the child has to suffer the consequence. So it's like when you do something bad, you reap the consequences. So what, you go to jail, or you possibly suffer the death sentence. Obviously not with rape, but I'm just talking in general about consequences. So in this case, it's like a guy does a heinous crime. Not only does he suffer the consequences, but somebody is murdered in the process, which is being the baby. That was the argument he had, which is pretty compelling. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, again, I think there should be these regulations, right? Like, I know some places I've heard of that you could have an abortion as late as like 8 months, 7 months.
Yeah.
I think that's just ridiculous, right? I think it should be limited to a certain amount of time, right? Like, once the embryo develops to a certain stage, I think it would be too late, right? Like, you're too late.
I think the biggest problem with this whole conversation is there's a big gray line. And I like the guest that I had on because he made like a very foundational, fundamental argument saying that we need to figure out at what point is the baby considered human, right? Because that's where the gray area is at. I think that's the biggest contention between the pro-abortion and pro-life is some people believe that it happens on based on conception. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Listen, guys, are y'all tired of being fat and unhealthy? Look, I feel you. I've struggled with weight loss for a majority of my life, but I recently lost 32 pounds. I want to tell y'all exactly how I did it. I changed my diet. I ate a little bit healthier. I know how hard that can be with so much convenient fast food restaurants, convenient grab-and-go foods that you can just pick up and go. But I want to show y'all a way where y'all can stay convenient and eat a bit healthier. That's why I want to tell y'all about my good friends at Primitive Eats. It's a local, homegrown, small business that is a meal prep company. And they are derived off the paleo diet. Really quickly, paleo is just a natural way of eating food. Taking out simple carbs, sticking to the earth, okay? It is very good for you. It's very healthy for you, and you can support a local small business. It's always great. So if you're in the Los Fresnos, Brownsville, or Harlingen, San Benito area, go check them out. They have plans where you can buy for the full week. They will deliver it for you. Quick, easy, and go, and it's super delicious. They support the podcast. I support them. Go check them out. And if you don't want to get their meal plan, listen, check out their Instagram. That is Primitive Eats 90. I'm going to leave it in the description. If you're not going to follow them for the meal preps, follow them for their memes because their memes are hilarious. Also, little quick fun fact, they do raffles, which I recently won concert tickets on their page. True story. Go check them out. I support Primitive Eats. Primitive Eats supports the podcast, and we love them. Go check them out. All right, guys, I wanted to interrupt this podcast just to clear what is going on right now. No, we're giggling and laughing. There was actually a hilarious blooper that happened throughout this conversation. So we're not laughing at the topic at hand. Obviously, it's a very serious topic, and we wouldn't do that, which is why I wanted to clear this up. In respects to the guest, he asked me to take it and edit it off the podcast. So that's what I did in regards to him. But he did say that he would allow me to put it on Patreon. So for the listeners, if you don't know, we do have a Patreon, and I will be releasing the blooper clip that happened live on the podcast on Patreon. All you have to do is subscribe to the Patreon, first link in the description, and check it out. So if you want to get into the loop about what had happened, trust me, it's a good laugh and it's very worth it. So thank you all, and let's jump back into the conversation. Thank you. I'm not laughing at anything topic related right now. But for those that saw, y'all know. Anyways, we have to contend with at what point is the baby human? Because if we agree that the baby is human at conception, then we have to agree that abortion is murder. We have to agree that abortion is... Why are you laughing? You don't even know what happened.
I don't know if I agree with that. Like you said, right? At what point is the embryo considered human, right?
Yeah.
I think if you do it before that, is it considered murder? But here's the thing you got to think of also is that if people want to get abortions and you don't allow them to, there's a certain amount of people who are going to take the matter into their own hands.
Yeah.
And it's been happening forever, right? Like when abortion wasn't a surgical thing, people would do it at home, right? With coat hangers, or they would throw themselves downstairs, or hit themselves in the stomach, like shit like that, right?
Yeah, I brought that up to him, and he said that that's like that's not real. Like that's something that that's
well documented.
Yeah, to him, he says that it's something that has been amplified by like so much that it doesn't actually happen, but. Anyways,
yeah, there's a lot of people out there who don't want to be parents, and they'll do whatever it takes to not be parents, because a lot of people feel it will ruin their life, or they're not ready, or whatever the case may be. So there's always those people that take it to the extreme.
Yeah, so I have a very unique, interesting stance, because I think a lot of people expect me to be pro-life. A lot of people think that I lean more towards the conservative side. I don't identify as, liberal or conservative. I just don't. Like, you can label me whatever you want. I just don't want to see it. I just don't want myself to place myself in those categories. I just don't. But I entered that conversation with that pastor as a self-proclaimed pro-choice, meaning like, well, people should have the option to do what they want, right? It feels weird to me. It doesn't feel right to give the government the power for us to do whatever we want to our own body. Now, here's where I kind of contradict myself, because I do believe that the baby is human at conception. So I do believe that people are committing murder by having abortion, right? So with that being said, it's a heinous crime, and that's how it is to me. That would never happen in my marriage. My wife and I have spoken about it. We spoke about it before we even got married, if which we're going to be having a kid right now, but it's like, hey, if we ever get pregnant, we're going to have the child, and it's, without question. So we're both on the same page with that. But I do think that it is murder. And so with everything else, with all other sins, without all other crimes, it's up to the person whether they want to commit that sin or they don't, right? And me being a Christian, I've always looked at Christianity and the Bible being, well, God gives us free will to do what we want. If we want to sin, we have to reap the consequences. We have, you know what I mean? We have to deal with the stuff that comes along with it. And I believe that someone that is going to have an abortion, because there's also the argument that pro-lifers say is like, well, the people that have abortions, they don't, they regret it later. They do this, they do that. They suffer depression. And to that, this is what I say. I say, if they commit an action, they're going to have to reap the benefits. They're going to have to reap what they sow. And so if it is true that they're going to go through depression and all that, well, let them make their own choice. And let them suffer if they're going to suffer so bad. That was the argument that I had made going into this whole topic. Now, I'm not solidified on that, because there's some part of me that says, well, if I truly believe that abortion is murder, what happens if I went to go murder you? I go to jail. So it's against the law, right? So I kind of, with just that statement, I kind of just defeated my whole argument, what I just said. And this is something that I've been contending with in my head. So that's why I can't truly come to a for sure stance on where I sit with this whole abortion thing. Do I support abortion? I do not. Absolutely. I think it's a wrong thing to do. But should my beliefs be somebody else's reality? I don't know. That's where I stand. It's like, damn, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I would have an abortion, right? Like if I were ever to get pregnant, obviously with my partner, I don't think I would, right? But I would like to have the choice. Maybe I'm cracked out and I don't want a kid. I don't know. But man, there was something I was gonna say. We're
gonna talk about the conspiracy theory pretty soon here, but we'll wait till the end.
About what? About abortion?
Yeah. Remember we were talking about this the other day about why the conspiracy theory as to why people are trying to the population.
The clip I had sent you, right?
Yes. Which I have already heard that theory before. But before we get into that, what I want to talk about is I have this firm belief, and I want to see if you also have the same belief, is that, do you think that having children nowadays is being demonized? Because I feel like it's a very popular thing now to promote not having children. I know so many people like, well, I don't want to have kids. Like, I don't want to compromise myself, my future, my career, whatever it is, to having children. I've even heard myself, because I want quite a few kids. Like, I want a lot of children. I want a big family. And people tell me, you're crazy. And I'm like, why? Why is that so crazy? Like, I want to have 5 kids. People in the 1900s, 1800s were having dozens and dozens of kids. And I feel like right now is the best time to have kids. We're just so well better off, whether that's medication or, scientifically, we're just way better off. Their survival rate of children back now than it is back then. It's just, it's higher. We have.
Well, isn't that why they had so many? Is because they knew some of them wouldn't make it.
That could be the case.
And to help on the farm and to bring in, a bigger yield of money. I mean, there was lots of reasons. They kind of bred kids for their own benefit, not because they love kids per se.
But that's partly why I want a big family. Honestly,
so they could take care of you, or what?
Not only me, but so they can take care of each other too. That's a big reason. I was thinking about that the other day. A big reason why I want to have a lot of kids is so that when it's all said and done, I'm old, I have this big family that's willing to help each other out. And I had this big talk with my wife about this, about how because she also has a big family, but they all pretty much do the same thing. I was like, man, I feel like it'd be such a benefit to have a huge family and for them to have different expertise. Because just imagine, if every single person in your family had a different trait, that would benefit you so much. They would benefit each other. It'd be almost like a small society of people that you can, bounce off and help each other out. That's the way I kind of see it.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, that for sure could be the case. Or what if they have no fucking useful traits?
That's pretty.
You ever think about that?
No, that's pretty pessimistic right there.
That is, but I mean, I just you're imagining this beautiful life, which is great, right? But there's always two sides to each coin. That no one ever thinks they're gonna have a serial kill child until they have one, right? I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying, like, I like seeing both sides of it. I want kids. I don't want a huge family, but I do want maybe 2 to 3 kids max 3.
Yeah.
And I think your idea of a big family isn't even that big, honestly.
I agree, but it's been scrutinized to be that way. It's like, whoa, like that's too many kids.
Where do you see that? Where do you see this this kind of demonization of kids, of having kids?
Having kids or having a lot of kids? Both. Well, having a lot of kids, I hear from everybody that I tell, whether that be at work, within my family, friends, I tell them I want 5 kids, and they're like, that's just too much. Like, you're not gonna be able to handle it. It's like, come on.
That's a good sized family, but I don't know if that's a huge family, right?
I agree.
When I think of whoa, that's a huge family, I'm thinking 7+ kids. But I think 5 is like a nice family. Like,
I agree. But I think in general, and I think that's the bigger topic or discussion right now, is I think just having kids in general is being demonized because, let's look at it from the stance of the average age of women having kids has and is still going up. So it's like back in the day, we were talking about this on your podcast the other day. It's like females were having kids like at 15, 16, 17, right? Which were nowadays it'd be underage.
Yeah.
But it's slowly going up, and now females are having kids and they're waiting until after their careers are, established and they got themselves they got their feet under themselves and everything like that, which is usually in their 30s. That's like the popular age now is I'm gonna have kids when I'm 30. So you can see the gap, right? And that's not necessarily demonizing having children, but you can see how we're slowly trying to delay it, right? But just in general, I've heard many females, whether that be online or in person, tell me, I just don't want to have kids. I think that they always say like I'm gonna put myself first. It's
Oh yeah, I think our generation is a very much more selfish generation than previous, right? The previous generations think about um we just have different values and wants, right?
yeah.
Like we could both agree to that our generation is much more self-centered and more about my career and my wants, my dreams first, right? And so for sure I see that as well. I've spoken to so many people that do not want kids because I mean one guy even admitted to me, he's like, I'm selfish. He's like, I don't want to wake up and have to worry about another human other than myself.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the thought that a lot of people have. But for me, I don't see it like that. I see it as a mini me,
Yeah.
mini me that I get to help and create and mold him into a good person, hopefully.
I heard this interesting take. It came from Sam Tripoli from the Tinfoil Hat podcast. Listen, he's comical and he's silly, but he says some real stuff sometimes. He said, "Isn't it ironic how our grandparents work so hard so that we can have a career, and we try so hard not to have kids so that we can cater to our career?" It's like, shouldn't we like continue the
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
The cycle.
Yeah, we should look up to our grandparents and be like, man, he worked so hard so that I can fit in the position that I'm in right now, or land running, right? And then I should do the same for the next generation. But no, it's like, no, like I'm gonna stop it here. Let me try to get as far as I can go. Forget the next generation.
Well, do you think it has to do with parenting? Because I know my parents are like, do not have kids until you're ready, until you're stable, until you could handle it. And so they kind of, I know that's the case for a lot of people's parents. A lot of people that I talked to, they're like, no, no, no. Except for this one coworker of mine that he was like, yeah, my parents are actually begging me to have kids. And he's like 18. He's like, yeah, like they want me to have a kid right now. They don't care. Like they just want grandkids. And so I'm like, is that, do you think parenting could come into play on that?
I 100% do think so. I think that parents don't have enough faith in our generation to think that we can handle our own kids. But I think it's partly their fault. I think that maybe because I think the world functions in a pendulum. I truly do. And the pastor disagreed with me on this, but I truly believe it. I believe that we start off on this side being like I guess you can call it conservative side. I don't think that's the right word to use, but like the more like structured side, and then we start to tilt towards like the more looser side, and it kind of goes with that quote. And I know you know that quote, and the listeners that don't know this quote, it's very popular. What is it? Hard man.
No.
Strong
men create. Is it easy times?
Tough times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create tough times. And so
Yeah.
I truly believe that we're in that era of easy times make weak men. And so I think that eventually we're going to slide back into that pendulum to where we start to figure out, okay, we need to be tough again. That's what I truly think. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in our lifetime.
Oh, you think so?
I think so.
Yeah, I think our generation is super soft, bro.
I think that's
For
what,
sure.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, like the things, like I'm a person that I know you and I probably disagree on a lot of stuff. Like for instance, right? Like people that are so focused on these like equality and all this shit. And you and I have talked about how that's the primary focus now, because there's really nothing to worry about anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from. Like, you're worried about, call me they, make sure you call me they, or we have a problem. And that's like the biggest worry we have right now. That's how you know that we're fucking coasting through the easy times right now.
Yeah, 100%.
That's our main target, is to worry about the way that someone else speaks to us or refers to us.
Identity. We had to.
Yeah.
It's dude. We talked about this. It's when
another thing that Sam Tripoli said was that we're the only country that has fat homeless people.
Yeah,
and if you really sit there and think about that, think about the fact that our homeless people are privileged enough to be fat, right?
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're not going through a tough time.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that
they're eating good.
Suck. Yeah, but there's food shelters and food banks and all these different things where they can eat until they're full. Obviously, if you see a fucking obese homeless man, right? Yeah. Not saying that they all do, but I'm saying this is one of the few countries that you will see a overweight homeless person.
Yeah.
And this is easy times, and a lot of people don't realize that. They want to focus on small things. And I know a lot of people are like, well, it's not small, it's the way I identify myself. Well, that's fine, but you just got to realize that you can worry about that because we're so blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a bad thing? Here's my take on it. I think this is the perfect era, the perfect time for the tough people that know what's going on to take advantage of it. Because when it swaps to the other side where you have the tough guys, when you have the strong guys, it's going to be kind of hard to get on top. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be competing with a bunch of tough guys, right? Yeah. So right now is when all the tough people that know what's going on need to take advantage of the weak people and get ahead. And get ahead. I mean, that's the way I see it. But at the same time, if the weak people are running the world or running the country, that's how you get people that are being canceled. If you think about it, people are being canceled by the weak people that are trying to be strong.
Yeah.
That's why so many comedians are getting canceled.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I think.
That's very true.
I feel like the people that are listening right now, they might not understand what we're talking about. You might need to listen to this podcast twice and really sit on what we're talking about. Because I think the stuff that we're talking about is super deep.
You think so?
I think it's deep. Like, if you sit there and think about it.
I feel like your average viewer is a very intellectual person, so I don't think they'll have a problem understanding.
Yeah, but I just think that if you give yourself enough time to think about the stuff that we're talking about long enough, you start to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Just that comment about that we have fat homeless people. Think about that.
A lot of people hear that, but they don't understand, right?
Yes.
Like, if you go anywhere else and you see homeless people, they're gonna be malnourished people. And I was just in LA, I want to say like a month ago, and I saw a bunch of tents, right? And coming out of this tent was this huge dude. And the first I was with my partner at the time, right? And I was like, I don't think you and I both know, right? I told her, I don't think you know how many calories he has to consume a day to maintain that weight. Like, that's a close to 300-pound man that doesn't have a home.
He's eating better than you.
He's eating more than me, right? And so how does that make sense? Like, this guy's getting all the food that he needs, and he's homeless, right? So that's, I mean, at least we could say we're that privileged, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to find anywhere else.
Yeah. And so that's what I mean. I don't mean that the people listening right now aren't smart enough to understand. But even like these topics that we're talking about, sit down and think about it, man, dude. You just start to unfold things. You start to peel the onion back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and to be clear about the abortion thing, I don't think you should be allowed to get an abortion past the state of where it's considered humanoid, right? So once it's, I think, how I honestly don't know, but I'm just throwing out a number, right? Let's say 2 months. After 2 months, it starts to develop a brain or whatever. Then I don't think you should be allowed to. I think if you really want an abortion, you should get it before that time period. If not, you shouldn't be allowed to. Because I think late abortions are murder. I agree with that. But I think if you do it before the point that it's considered human, then I don't think so.
Yeah, I
Because
think what needs to be
stopped it before it developed.
I think what needs to be established is when is it considered a baby or human?
Because I know of states that would do it like 8 months old and shit like that. And at that point, it's like if you waited 8 months to get an abortion, sorry, you gotta have the kid now because you sat too long on that. You can't let a baby develop and have a mind of its own and then say you don't want it. Like that's murder, bro. That's a full on baby. Yeah. But I don't think it's that if it's an embryo that hasn't developed yet.
Okay. That's fair enough. Before we get into conspiracy theory, I need to touch on the amount of abortions that you get to have, kind of like that punch card joke that I made. I don't agree with that at all. I think that's like a novelty argument. I think that we need to be arguing fundamentally, which is the argument that we just had right now, which is at what point is it a human, and then after that you can't have it. Before that, whatever. You're not. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it, whatever. Because the whole like that guy that adds more blurriness, right? It's like, oh well, you can have this many abortions.
No, I mean it's just that my thought with it is that just like with everything, right? There's gonna be people that abuse it just because they can. So there's gonna be people that just because they can are gonna get fucking 4 abortions a year, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just ridiculous, man. Like I don't think that should be allowed either.
But if there's nothing wrong with it, then why not? Like if to your argument is like if it's within 2 months, why not?
Yeah, but at some point I feel like people got to start taking responsibility for.
That's my point, which is why I'm saying after the point of when it's a human, you gotta take responsibility for your actions.
Yeah, that exactly. I agree. If it's past that point, no abortion for you. But obviously, it's gonna be hard to keep track of how many, right? Fucking yeah. This girl had 6. This girl had 7. Like, and if you're one of those people that has that many, like, fuck, you got issues.
Facts.
Like, there's so much shit out there to keep you from having kids. They're even coming out with male birth control. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but it's apparently like a pill version of what girls take, but for men. So the fact that there's so much shit out there that you can take to prevent pregnancy and you're having multiple abortions, there's something wrong with you, and you're obviously irresponsible, and you got to take a look at yourself.
I 100% agree with that part. Let's talk about the whole conspiracy theory thing because I think that's super interesting. So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, there is a theory going around that the reason why the government is trying to the reason why the government did make abortion not a constitutional right is to prevent the minorities overtaking the majority. So basically to keep white people on top is what I'm trying to say. So the statistics say that white women are having the most abortions, being at 37%. So 37% of all abortions are from white females. And so they predicted if at this rate, if it continues the way it does, by 2045, the Hispanic community will be the majority in the United States. And so with that being said, usually the majority has the power in the country. So the theory is that white people are scared of losing the power in the United States. Therefore, let's end abortion so we can keep our white population up. What do you think about that?
I mean, I saw Charlemagne the God break it down on one of his Instagram videos.
Yeah.
And it's something that I would have never in a million years thought of. I would have never been like, oh, they don't want abortions because they want to keep white people around. Like, I don't see that adding up. But the way he explained it, it 100% made sense. And if you think about it, the states that ban abortion are like majority white, like over the top, like Alabama,
Conservative states.
yeah, but
but
mostly white, like second to none, right? Like mostly fucking white. So when you think about that, you're like, huh, that could be a possibility as to why they're so against abortion, right? Is to keep white people on top. I mean, I don't know, but obviously I don't want to say that's what I believe, but that's interesting. Interesting. Yeah. These things kind of line up and make sense in a way, right?
Yeah, it's something that I'm willing to entertain, but it's not something that I'm able to 100% believe in. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, but like that, it might be a little bit too far-fetched for me to subscribe to that idea that all these white people, came together as like, hey, we're gonna lose our power. Like all these people at the Supreme Court, they're old, bro. They're not gonna be alive to even see themselves in power, the whites in power. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit too far-fetched, but it was interesting, and I thought that,
Yeah, I think it's far-fetched too. Like I don't believe these white people that are voting to end abortion. I don't believe that they have that reason behind it. But I think there probably is a percentage of people that are against abortion for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, right? But to say that that's the plan, that's the agenda, ooh, I don't know. But it's interesting.
Hey guys, I want to tell you all about my good friends at Meta Training. As you all know, I am a huge fitness fanatic, but there has been one critical element that has been missing from my fitness journey. It is commonly overlooked and extremely underrated, and that is programming. Listen, if you're just starting off, I understand that it can be very hard, and we do want to go on YouTube. We want to check out all these influencers, but listen, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, and that is exactly why you need a program, and that's exactly what Meta Training does. They provide a program depending on your goals, whether it's to build strength, gain muscle, whether it's to lose body fat, to increase endurance. Meta Training has multiple trainers to target whichever part of your fitness journey that you want to attack. Also, they have some great apparel. They hooked me up with this, I think it's called like the oversized tee, right? So it's like it's kind of like a pump cover. So they hit me up and they met me up at the gym, and they're like, listen, we want you to represent. So that proves to me that Meta Training supports the podcast. Therefore, the podcast supports Meta Training. You can find them on Instagram, and their handle is training.meta, and they also have a website. So if you can't necessarily get their program, I do recommend checking them out on Instagram and maybe buying some of their apparel. It is slick, it's clean, and I'm telling you, I'm going to wear it on my next gym sesh. So thank you all. Go check out Training Meta Training. Thank you. Bye-bye. The biggest demographic in America is white women. And all like the successful businesses and powerful people in the world. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, too much. all the powerful people and the businesses know that. So that's why all these companies, these big companies, they cater to the white woman demographic because that's the biggest demographic in America. I don't know if you knew that. So that's interesting to me.
I didn't. Wait, white women are the majority?
White women are the majority. So if you were to, like, I'm looking up at a chart right now. If you were to look up, like, statistically, race and gender, white women would be at the top as far as population goes. So with that being said, if they're having the most abortions, that's also going to go down. You see how that kind of, like, supports it in a way?
Yeah. That makes sense. That's interesting.
Very interesting. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, I think I'm gonna call it a wrap there. This was an interesting topic. I didn't want to wait too long to discuss this conversation, you know, being that everybody's so riled up right now, but the whole Roe versus Wade being overturned. I know there's a lot of women upset right now, and I mean, I kind of feel for you, then I kind of don't. I don't know. I'd probably feel a different way if I was a woman. I don't know. Who knows? But this is the way I feel. This is the way we feel. And if you have a different take on it, make sure you let us know down in the comments below. Let us, if you're listening on Spotify, I invite you to let me know what you think about on Instagram. That's the only way you can obviously contact me. You can't do it through Spotify. But thank you guys for listening. If you're new, make sure you follow the Instagram being The Real Common Podcast. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find the podcast. Make sure you go follow my second podcast being Saul's podcast, The Outlier Podcast, on YouTube. And he also has an Instagram being The Outlier Podcast. And with that being said, you got anything else to say?
Nope, that's it.
It's a wrap. Thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, catch y'all later. Peace.
Peace.
On the track.